Tottenham Hotspur 2, Manchester United 2, and a game I have to be honest, I really enjoyed. I know it wasn't great at times from both teams, it seemed a bit slow and sluggish, but I think there was a lot to learn from this game as well. And I think a draw was a fair result. I'm not entirely sure if either fan base will be happy with that considering how the game went, but I'm going to try and break it down for you and show you where the positives and negatives were for both sides. And for Manchester United, I have to say I was quite surprised with the lineup that Ruben Amorim decided to go for. Harry Maguire coming in, that wasn't too much of a surprise for me. There's clearly certain games and certain instances where Ruben Amorim prefers Harry Maguire coming into the side ahead of the likes of Lenny Yoro, so that wasn't too much of a surprise. What was a surprise for me was Mazraoui coming in, which meant them pushing Ahmad further up, and then Mbeumo down the left-hand side, which I wasn't sure about this, considering the fact that I think Mbeumo has arguably been Man United's best player so far this season, and to move him out of position, I thought that was surprising. However, it did turn out to work out quite well, considering Ahmad was the one who provided the assist for the first goal from the right-hand side, and Mbeumo headed it in from the left. So clearly that worked, and clearly that was something that Ruben Amorim maybe tried to work on in the week, and we'll talk about that later. And from the Spurs perspective, I think I was really excited to see Xavi Simons again down the middle. He's had a bit of a rough time of it as of late, but I do think that he shows really good bright sparks, and there's still a little bit more to come from him. Colomani up front, I thought, yeah, fair enough, and Richarlison coming back inside on the left, I thought it was going to be really interesting, and ultimately he gets what he thought at the time was a winning goal, but just the goal to make it 2-1. And I thought that both teams were really going to be going at it, and I thought it was going to be a good game. It turned out that Man United they played a lot of long balls in the last few games because clearly they didn't trust their ability to build up the ball from the back. And I thought they were going to do that again because I thought where Spurs are strong is their pressing game. And they probably want Man United to play from the back. And if they were to go long, that would be to their advantage. However, they decided to play the ball from the back and try and build a play through here. And I thought that was really interesting because to me, I think that showed two things. One, that Man United were getting and becoming a lot more confident with the ball at their feet and playing out from the back, which I think is incredibly encouraging. But the second thing I think that highlighted was maybe Manchester United did not rate the Spurs press, and I don't think it worked too well. I think at times the ball, Maguire would get the ball, he passed it to Ligt, passed to Mazraoui or Dorgo, and then it ended up going long anyway and recycling possession like that. But it did kind of show to me that, okay, we've maybe started assuming that Man United are going to be going long all the time, but this is what you want. When Man United do go long and the team starts to stop pressing, that they can then get the ball from the back and play it out, but it didn't quite work as well as they maybe hoped for in this game. And I did think that, the likes of Palhinha and Sarr really were aggressive and really were able to get the ball back a lot better than I think Ruben Amorim wanted to. But ultimately, I think Spurs were the better side-ish at the beginning of this game. The issue was they just weren't creating any chances. And come the 35th minute, Muani, Johnson and Richarlison, I saw a graphic that TNT Sports put up that they had the least amount of touches in the entire game so far. And I thought that is just unacceptable at this point. And getting the ball from the Spurs perspective, from the back, from this six here to the front four, I thought was a bit of an issue. Constantly, I thought that Xavi Simons was dropping far too deep and not getting the ball in areas where he can really affect the play and helping out in build-up, which was an issue. But I think he needs to be further up, and when he can be further up, he can make those changes and help the team get further afield. But ultimately, it was Man United who went 1-0 up, and I thought at that point, the game plan was probably going as well as they probably hoped to. And this is the build-up to Manchester United's very first goal. And I do have to say that I am using the JLA Tactics Board. A link to it will be in the description below. I am having a lot of fun using it. I think it's really good, and I highly recommend it if you get the chance to use it. And so this is the build of the first goal. And I think the Man United are definitely improving in their attacking style of play. Because if you remember when Ruben Amorim first came into Manchester United, there was a lot of criticism and even comments from Ruben Amorim talking about how it's easier to get fullbacks to play wing back rather than attackers because they know the defensive position, and then that way Man United can be a lot more solid. But now, as we can see, I'm really encouraged by the fact that Man United have 6 players in around the penalty area. You've got Dorgo at the back post. You've got Bruno Fernandes here. You've got Brian Mbeumo who scores this goal. Matheus Cunha the striker. Amad Diallo, the other wing back, and the attacking number 10, and Mazraoui, the wing back. You've got 6 players there, all in and around the penalty area, really getting forward. And I think that with only playing one game a week, Man are really improving in terms of their attacking style of play and getting more confident in the system, which is really encouraging to see. But I think here, as the ball comes over, because the ball starts out on the left-hand side and it makes its way over to the right-hand side with Ahmad there, I am really, really questioning some of the Spurs positioning here because ultimately, of course, it's Porro and Mbeumo there. Porro loses Mbeumo and Mbeumo gets the good ball in the back of the net from the header, from the cross. And I really do think to myself that the mistake that Porro makes, and I'm a fullback, I play Sunday League, there's a mistake I make quite a lot, but he's a Premier League footballer, Pedro Porro, and he marks the space and not the man. Because he's coming into that position rather than already being there, that is a mistake. What he needs to do is, if he was already in the penalty area in a good position, you mark the space and then you wait for the Manchester United player to get into the box and then you end up marking the man when he gets there. But because of the fact that he's not in the right position at the right time, he then goes to mark the space where he should immediately go and try and mark the man, and he ends up losing him. And that's where it leads to the goal, because obviously he ends up losing him, he ends up ball watching a bit, and Brian Boom, it's a fantastic ball into the back of the net. But there's other Spurs players who could really be helping out here. It is a 3v2 at that back post. And if it wasn't Brian Mbeumo, I think Johnson is slow to get there, if I'm being honest, to Patrick Dorgu. Also, Bruno Fernandes is completely free, so where's he going? I really think that, maybe Xavi Simons, maybe Paulinho. But also, I also look at where the cross came in. 2-on-2, that's pretty alright. But does there need to be a man there? Really? I don't think so. I actually think that if every single Spurs player moves back one, I actually think that would be a better position for the whole team to be in. And again, marking the space rather than the men, I think Xavi Simons there needs to realise that, hang on, where's the danger? Actually, the danger's all here, all at the back post. That's where this ball is going, and you need to try and figure out how to stop it. And ultimately, I think you have to give credit. It's a fantastic goal. And at that point, I don't think Spurs had really threatened Manchester United at all. And I did think to myself that, you know what, despite the fact they haven't created too many chances, neither had Spurs. Spurs were really struggling to break Manchester United down. And I thought to myself, you know what, I think it's fair play for Man United to be 1-0 up at halftime, and I think they thoroughly deserved it. And while Manchester United were probably the better team in that first half, I do have to say I think Spurs were the better side in the second half, even though they were creating some chances, but they weren't creating too much. And I think they really do have an issue in build-up that I think Thomas Frank needs to find a way to try and solve, because obviously based on last season and Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham side, Frank's could definitely come in. He's trying to make him a lot more solid and robust and hard to beat first, and then he's going to try and sort out the attack. Obviously, injuries to the likes of Madison and Kulusevski definitely haven't helped. I mean, Dominic Solanke as well, one of your top goal scorers from last year. But I think really, this midfield, and last season, not last season, sorry, at the beginning of this season, it's been a lot of Paulinho and Sarr, which a lot of Tottenham fans are talking about. It's constantly just sideways between these two. Paulinho that way, Bendicott back that way, and today it was Paulinho this way, Sarr that way. And it's really a lot of backward passing as well, not too much going forward. And they definitely need to sort it out. But I think in this one, they were trying to do that a bit. I'm not sure it really quite worked. And then what there was in the second half especially, Koulibaly came off. Richarlison went up top. And then for Spurs, they brought on Wilson Odobert, who I thought, came on and really made an impact in the game. He went to the left wing, and Paulinho in that second half was starting to drop a little bit more into these spaces and create kind of like a back three against Man United's front three, which I thought worked to an extent, with Johnson going really high and wide, Odobert going really high and wide, trying to get Simmons further up, Sarr further up, and then Spence further up as well. But then also, to get Porro into these positions here where he's a fantastic passer of the ball. He can really open up a game, but he's not always the most accurate in terms of getting those passes away. And sometimes it's a bit 50-50 if you can make those raking long passes to the other side of the pitch or not. But getting him into these positions rather than Paulinho, I thought was a sensible decision for Thomas Frank to do in that second half, because I think that matching them 1-for-1, especially with the recovery pace of Mickey van de Ven, I think that clearly he's got the pace, as well as Romero being a really good defender against Cunha and Paulinho against Boomer. But at that point, Spurs were losing, so you really had to try and go for it. And Johnson going up here, I think, was pinning Dorgu a bit, but I think Dorgu did have the better of him. And ultimately, I think it took Spurs to have a lot of changes into that second half. I think Maddie Stel, when he finally came on, made a really good substitution, as well as Destiny Udogie. But I do have to think, I do worry about Spurs long term, because I think it's an issue for Frank to try and sort out. But like I said, Udogie did come on eventually for Pedro Porro, which I thought at the time was a mistake. Tell came on, Xavi Simons went off, and I really did think to myself at this point, like, I'm not sure if Thomas Frank is reading the room right, taking Xavi Simons off. But his substitutions did pay off. They come off really, really well. And you have to give him credit, because I think it was fair play. He made a big, bold decision, which the fans did not like. They booed him in the stadium, but he got away with it because it absolutely worked. And I think for Man United, they were incredibly disappointing that second half. I think Casemiro coming off and Ugarte coming on, I'm not sure about Manuel Ugarte's future at Man United. I don't think he has one long term, because I do really think to myself that he came on in that second half and he absolutely stung the place off. I think Sesko came in and I think he was good while he came on. I think we're going to talk about him now. There's going to be some positives with Sesko and some negatives. But I was a bit surprised that Amorim decided to leave Mbeumo on the left-hand side and move Cunha right. I did think why not just swap him around the way he did. But I think there were chances for Man United to win this game. But ultimately, I think Spurs getting back into it was the fair result. Because for 84 minutes, Manchester United defended really, really well. And on another day, then the whole narrative around this game is completely different. But only one clean sheet so far this season in the Premier League. I think that is a big worry for Ruben Amorim, something he needs to try and sort out, because yeah, they were doing really well for 84 minutes, but you did feel Spurs knocking on the door. Lamens made two really great saves, one from a header from Richarlison, which he just stuck a leg out, another one a shot from Paulinho, which he parried and saw very, very late. But at this point, it's getting desperate now, and I think Man United are far too open. And I think also Manuel Ugarte, let's make it a little bit bigger, Manuel Ugarte, who came on for Casemiro, I do have to say, not just here, but actually previously did that. I think he should have done better as well. But he did end up costing Man United, I think, this game. And if maybe saying something, did he have to bring Ugarte on? Did he have to take Casemiro off? Maybe it's just the fact that his legs maybe was tired, but he's playing one game a week. Yes, he's 33, but yeah, I think it really, really came back to haunt Man United. I think Thomas Frank got a substitution spot on, and I think Ruben Amorim got a substitution wrong, because here we have Odegaard who passed the ball to Udogie, and then as we move it on, he's the one who put the ball, his cross into the box. And here I think there was a Man United in a really good position. It's just really, you're looking at Richarlison and you're looking at Tell, who ends up scoring the goal. And both of them are quite decently well marked. I think you have to give credit to Tell here. I think it is just fantastic centre forward play. The fact that he can get away from Ligt and going away from goal, get the power in the shot. Yes, there's a deflection, but I think you have to give credit to Matthijs Tell and just go fair play. I think that was a really good goal. And there's not really much Ligt can do about it. He gets his body in the way. Unfortunately, it's not enough and gets deflection. And the men's, I think, has been brilliant at this point. So I think this one you can't really give any criticism for. But then it's the fact that Spurs probably think to themselves, okay, go on, we've won it. But before then, and this is where the highs and lows of Benjamin Sesko. So obviously he wins a header against Mickey van der Ven. He does that brilliantly well. And Mason Mount, who's come on at this point, is then able to run onto the ball and make a run. And at this point I'm thinking to myself, if he can reverse this pass and pass it back to Sesko, then that ball's on. But I thought to myself, he's going to pass it to Mbeumo here and it's going to work its way eventually to Mason Mount, maybe. But the fact that he's found Sesko first time, and Sesko, should he be scoring? Yeah, I think so. Because at this moment, right, and I know he's a Premier League level footballer, Man played a lot of money for him, but I think he has to be doing better. Because he needs to get his body in the way of the ball. The way he ends up going, he's ended up running that way to try and open his body up and try and put the ball in that corner. I think that's the wrong thing to do. And I think actually, fair play to Udogie, because I think he can see him and then he thinks to himself, okay, this way, away from the goal, is the way that I need to go. But actually, it is to the, past Mickey van der Ven, because I think that's the way that he scores. And so actually, I think he needs to be going this way, get his body in front of Mickey van der Ven, and then put the ball in this corner of the net and put it past Vicario. But I just think Udogie gets into his head far too much here. And then Mickey van der Ven, you have to give credit as well, because what a recovery from there. I think, Benjamin Sesko cannot let Mickey van der Ven see any of the ball there, and he has to go, if you're going to get the ball, you're going to have to go through me and you're going to have to take me down. There's either going to be a penalty or it's going to be a red card or it's going to be both. But the fact is that he opens his body up too much, and I think a more experienced striker one who's more accustomed to the Premier League, maybe has a few more mints in his legs, maybe does that, and maybe has confidence to do that. But I just think at this point, Man United could really have been 2-1 up at this point. But it is unfortunate. It stays 1-1, and then Spurs go the other end. And you have to give credit to Van de Ven. And Man United down to 10 men at this point because they made the substitutions, and Sesko ends up getting injured as well, which I think is going to be a big blow for him, especially if he's going to be out for a few weeks. And the corner comes in for Spurs. Man United clear it to the edge of the box. Again to Wilson Odegaard, one of the changes. On the edge of the box, completely unmarked, gets away a shot. But the other one of the Man United changes and one of the mistakes I think Ruben Amorim made was bringing on Manuel Ugarte. Yes, he ends up in an unfortunate position, but from a second phase of a set piece, you need to be switched on, and he wasn't in this moment, and it did lead to Richarlison getting the flick on and putting it into the back post. And I thought to myself, everyone else has done their job. Maybe you could argue that Euro, and I can't even tell who it is because it's so pixelated, my bad, that here in this corner that maybe aren't as forward enough as they need to be, and Richarlison, they're also playing Richarlison on, but I do think that you have to look at Manuel Ugarte for leaving Richarlison on side. But I also have to think, credit to Richarlison, because he knows absolutely what he's doing. He knows where Ugarte is, he knows he's in an offside position, and Richarlison decides to stay in that way, try and block the keeper's path. And I've actually got it from, I do actually have it from the angle of behind as well. And you can clearly see that Lemens is completely rooted because he doesn't know where Richarlison is going to flick that ball onto, if he's even going to get onto it. And so therefore he has to delay where he's going to make the run. And I think, fantastic play by Richarlison, who I didn't think had the best of games, but he really turned up in this moment, celebrated like crazy, thought he got the winning goal, but unfortunately he didn't. And 10 Man United, and I think you have to give them credit because the fact that they, from 10 men, they decided to send the keeper up as well. A brave decision by Ruben Amorim because they could end up being counter-attacked, losing 3-1, and that would be a story. But here, if you told me that Man United had worked on this set piece with Lemens, I thought to myself, yeah, I can see that because the way they played and the way it was orchestrated, that made absolute sense. But the fact that Lemens ends up blocking the runner, the man who's meant to be with Ligt, I thought was really, really clever and something that maybe it's just a bit of natural chemistry. Maybe it just thought that's what we're going to do. But it's all for the sake of getting Ligt to this back post, which all these Spurs and United players are going to be leaving it vacant. And if we move one more, here you can see now Ligt starts making the run towards the back post because he's now lost his man. His man is now with Lemens, the goalkeeper, and the last thing you want to do is let a goalkeeper score, and all of a sudden it's going to be, all the headlines are going to be about how on earth did you let a goalkeeper score from set piece. Maybe you should have planned it a bit better. Thomas Frank loves the set piece, would be fuming. But it's not the goalkeeper, it's Matthijs de Ligt, who I thought had a fantastic game, one of Man United's better players so far this season. And he's getting the ball into the far post. And as you can see, Luke Shaw is completely blocking off all of the other Spurs players to not let any of them get back to Matthijs de Ligt. Make sure he has a free header of the ball. And the only place they can actually hit the ball is into that top corner. And that's exactly where he does it. And Man United are 2-2, get themselves back in the game. And I think they thoroughly deserve to get themselves back into the game. I think they deserve the point. I'm not sure if either side will be happy with the point based on how they played in this game. But I think it is one where it was incredibly entertaining. And I think the 2-2 was a very fair result. And I do think there is work to be done for both sets of teams here. I think Spurs, their build-up, I think it's too slow. It's too lethargic. There's not enough creativity. Xavi Simons looks like he can provide that spark for them. However, he's still adapting to the Premier League, and that's no blame on him. Yes, he's a very young player, but I think people think he's been around for a long time because obviously he's played for Barcelona, PSV, PSG, RB Leipzig as well as where he came from. So I think because he's been around for so long, people expect him to be the finished article right now, and he's not quite that, but he's showing a lot of promise. It's just about getting that final pass, that final delivery, and when he gets that, he's going to be an unbelievable player for the Spurs, and maybe that can help them unlock defenses a little bit better from open play. I think for Man United, I think a lot of positives. I think their first half was encouraging because I think they had Spurs in exactly the areas that they wanted them to be, and they ended up capitalising. They got the goal, but that second half was really, really poor, and they let Spurs get on top. And I think they could have done more to counteract Spurs. Yes, they could have gone 2-1 up, but I think they didn't create enough chances before Sesko had that chance, which was blocked by Mickey van der Ven. So I think a draw is a fair result. I think both teams have a lot to learn and a lot to go, but ultimately, from where both the sides were at the end of last season, before the Europa League final, where they were 17th and 15th, I think that for where they are now, where they're performing, it's a lot better. It's going to take some time though. It is a work in progress, and I think the future is bright for both these sides, both these players, both these managers as well. I go far to say even the Ruben Amorim, I think, is a more risk than Thomas Frank. But I do think it is an upward trajectory for both, and I think we just need to give both sides of players just a little bit more time.